Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vincent Medley. I am the Maddie's Human Animal Support Services Project Director. Before we get started, let me do a little bit of housekeeping. So just so you know, in Zoom, you'll see a Q&A option at the bottom next to the chat option. Please use the Q&A to submit questions you have for the panelists to ensure we see your question. Please use the chat to engage with each other and our panelists throughout the webinar. We ask that you stay on topic. In order to chat with each other, please use the blue drop box down in your chat box and switch it to everyone so that everyone gets the benefit of hearing your very important comment. Lastly, we are recording this webinar and it will be distributed within 3 business days to the email you registered with us. If you do not see it in the inbox in 3 days, be sure to check your spam or visit humananimalsupportservices.org /webinar, or is that no, that's /webinars. All right, so without further ado, let me introduce you to our panel today for It's Raining Cats and Kittens, how to save more feline lives this kitten season. We will have the opportunity to speak with a selection of incredible experts. This is such a timely topic because of the season we're in. Most of us are in kitten season. And I am going to invite the guests, starting with Danielle, to introduce themselves and tell the panel a little bit about yourself and how long you've been in animal welfare, and what you currently do in the movement.
Thank you, Vincent. I am Danielle Bays, and I am currently the Senior Analyst for Cat Protection and Policy at the Humane Society of the United States, which means I am the one person dedicated to working on all cat issues. I have been in animal welfare for a really long time, I'll just put it that way, essentially my career. But I didn't really get into focusing on cats until, like I'm sure many of you, I moved into a house with a whole bunch of cats outside. And next thing I knew, I was running a community cat program where I live. And I've been in this role with the HSUS for about 8 years now. So I am excited to be here with friends, old and new, and to share some wisdom and insights about cats and kittens with you all. Is this where I pass a baton on to?
Yes, pass the
I'm
baton.
gonna go to Monica.
Put me on the spot. Thanks, Danielle.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, thanks for everybody who's joined us. I'm always really tickled to see so many cat people who show up. So thank you all. My name is Monica Tarant. I am the Chief Innovation Officer with the Give Them 10 movement. And we are based out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and we're dedicated to giving cats a 10th life through promotion of spay, neuter, and community education and research and all things that benefit and increase feline welfare. Before that, I did about 10 years down in Austin with the Austin Pets Alive team and the Austin Animal Advisory Commission. And before that, like Danielle, I was a normal person and had dreams that did not include cats. I was a sales analyst at General Motors, and I bought a house when I was very young and stupid in rural Illinois. And it came with a whole barn full of cats that I knew nothing about. And so I had to figure that out and kind of learned the hard way before I moved down to Austin, and my life was never the same since. So that's a little bit about me, but again, thank you all for joining. And I will pick on Neil next.
Hi there, my name is Neil Hay. I am the Senior Director of Operations down at Austin Pets Alive. That means our dog, cat, and neonatal programs report through myself. But my background is all in cats. I joined APA in their cat program, and actually working with Monica helped establish the cat care program here at Austin Pets Alive. And then for 2 years, I was our neonatal program manager, and I actually only moved into this role 6 months ago, and it's a joy to be a cat person in a leadership role at an organization, and certainly an organization like APA that tries to do as much as we do. I don't know if I would call myself, I've been with APA for 7 years. I don't know if I would say I was ordinary before I came to APA. I made the wrong career choice coming out of school. And I was a corporate banker for 25 years. And really could not be more grateful that I discovered that this world existed and the chance to make the changes that we have through APA. I've always been a cat person. I brought a cat with me from Scotland, which is where my accent's originally from. I brought a cat with me from Scotland to New York. It's fair to say my cat brood is now slightly larger than that one cat that I brought from Scotland. And given the amount of cats I have at home is larger than my HOA tells me I'm allowed to have, I'm currently unwilling to state how many cats I have in my home, but it's a few. But it's a real pleasure to be able to speak to you all today. And I am going to pass you on to Peter.
Hello, everybody. I'm Peter Wolf. I'm with Best Friends. I've been with Best Friends for about 10 years now. My current role is senior strategist for shelter and community research, but I'm still sort of the default cat guy, which is how I get roped into these things. I've been involved in animal welfare for going on 15 years now, and like some of the other folks on the call, kind of stumbled into this by accident, and am grateful to have found it. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to somebody I don't know. I don't know Marnie, so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Marnie Russ, and I run, I'm the National Program Administrator for the Kitten College. And if you haven't heard of that, we're a fairly new program. It is based out of the Animal Welfare League of Arlington in Arlington, Virginia. I'm also co-founder of the National Kitten Coalition. We were commissioned to do a manual, and we went to all the 5 major nurseries in the country in 2016, and basically just to write a manual on what those nurseries learned, like a lessons learned. So when people wanted to create safe places for neonates, they sort of didn't have to make the same mistakes. And while I was sitting in those meetings, I thought, well, this is great if these kittens can end up in these major urban areas, but the majority of kittens end up in small to mid-sized municipal shelters. So what does it look like for them? And the grant originated through the Animal Welfare League of Arlington. So I went to Animal Welfare League of Arlington and said, what if we just tried this and what we learned in Arlington? So at the time, Arlington did about 92 kittens a year. We kicked off our version of what that manual taught us. And last year we did 1,547 kittens. So we were clearly addressing a need. And we have grown that little program from such a tiny little number to such a huge number. And we've taken the lessons learned and we travel around the country every week. We're in different shelters all across the country, just teaching them and giving them everything that we learned and letting them learn transparently from what we did and learning from them, and kind of creating a consortium that anybody can take from and we learn from them, and just sharing our knowledge. So we'd love to learn from you. We'd love to give you what we know. And prior to that, I was a lobbyist doing international aerospace. So again, I took a leap just like everybody else did. And I have no regrets. My bank account has a huge regret, but I wouldn't change anything. I think, Vincent, back to you.
Yes, back to me. So thank you. And as you all can see, this is a very knowledgeable and distinguished panel, and diverse in terms of that not only do they have a focus on cats, but they've done other really great things outside of. Thank you once again, all of you, for joining us. So I wanted to, get into, we know what season it is. Everybody knows it's cat and kitten season. And I know from working in shelters with high volumes, this is a really stressful time for shelters. And especially, well, not only for cats, but also dogs as well, but specifically for cats because of the explosion in population during this time. I'm just going to pose this to all of you, this question to all of you. Tell us, what is your number one tip for organizations helping to manage the influx of kittens and cats that come into the shelter during these really critical months of the year?
I can answer that. For our program, and what really allowed us to take in more was really taking restrictions away from our foster program. One thing that we do in the Kitten College, and why we call it the Kitten College, is that we make our fosters basically choose their specialty. So we have freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior fosters. That's specifically just for our kittens, but a freshman foster would take kittens that basically just need care until they reach sterilization age. So they don't require a small, they don't require a real precise eye. They just need, they're healthy, they're happy, they just need a safe place to stay. Our senior fosters would be the other end of that spectrum. They would have bottle babies that are at high risk for for illness and need to have a very savvy eye. And then in between that, our juniors would do older bottle babies. Sophomores would do younger kittens that are eating on their own and may have a daily med. And then we move those kittens through our process so that a kitten that comes in at a young age may have 2 to 3 fosters. But what that does is it really allows fosters to choose their own, destiny when they're with us. They have more of a say in what they're doing. And it also says, okay, if you have a kitten that comes in and they're like, well, we're going on vacation in 2 weeks, then that doesn't eliminate them from fostering. Especially in a place like DC where we definitely have a kitten season. I know in the South, their kitten season's 24/7. But when I first started fostering here, if I wasn't able to take a bottle baby for 8 weeks, that bottle baby's chances were greatly diminished. And I prefer bottle babies. And I'm good at bottle babies. Like, I understand their needs. And it was sort of wasted on me once they got weaned and were healthy and just, were just killing time till they could get put on the adoption floor. So for us, that really opened up a lot of fosters. So we went from fostering, we had, I think, 28 fosters when we started this. We now have over 300. And that's really just empowering the fosters. And it was just a little tweak that we made. We do things internally that allow to take the burden off of the internal staff for what that does when you have to switch them from, there's paperwork involved, obviously, when kittens are going from one foster to another. And we've been able to manage that really well. But for us, it's really been a great way to increase our foster core.
I'm going to jump in and jump on the bandwagon of what a lot of folks in the comments have been saying, and I was just really excited to see that. But TNR, think about it as working on those repeat offenders, those moms and dads, maybe multiple dads who keep having kittens, get them fixed before they come back again with another litter. And if you're feeling overwhelmed during kitten season to do TNR, there's still some things that you can do. And a lot of that is just gathering that information. And sometimes we forget about that. Like, when people are bringing kittens in, find out about the parents. What information can they tell you about where the parents may be, how to connect with the people in the community who are feeding them. Just looking at your data, keep your data, map out where the kittens are coming from in your community, separate that out from adult cats so you can go look back and say, here are some hot spots and we should do some proactive work in those neighborhoods. And whether it's TNR or just spay neuter access for community members in that area.
I'll jump in really quick and go a somewhat different route and say, if you haven't done it yet, there is still time to make sure you've got your written policies and protocols in place on your pathway planning, including absolutely embracing return to home if you have not gotten there yet. And by embracing return to home, so return to field, but we say return to home as the more friendly way to say that, that means it is the default pathway for healthy outdoor cats in a safe environment. The default is that they are spayed, vaccinated, maybe microchipped, and returned to home. So figuring out your pathway, the pathways that exist for all the cats who are coming in, so that ideally, even before a cat gets there, you know exactly what pathway it's going down, whether it's going down to adoption or foster or return, or what it needs, so you can be as efficient as humanly possible and save the very limited resources that you all have for the cats who absolutely need to be there. And lots of those protocols and flow charts exist if you don't have them yet. And it's also going to help those of you on the call who may have some critics in your community who don't like this return to home concept. It's going to help you to have those documents in place that are very transparent, that anyone can see, and that shows what a great job you're doing at giving every cat an individual assessment when it comes in, and show that you're providing really thoughtful approach to finding the best placement for that cat.
So I guess from our perspective, so our kitten program now is 100% foster based. We don't have an open nursery. And getting kittens into foster, we believe is the best place for them to be. But that doesn't mean they have to come to us. So I guess the first part of our approach is working with finders to try and keep the kittens where they are, keep them with the finders. If the finders need support from you, provide them that support. They don't have to come to you to get support. You can provide support to them. It's about being flexible. I really would stress that as well. We're not an open accept shelter, but we kind of are for bottle babies, because our city partner, our agreement with them is that we will take all bottle babies from them. So we get bottle babies very, very late in the day. And the key there is that flexible approach. So if we can find a foster to take them for us overnight on that first night, great. It gives us time to start working with our community to find a longer term placement for those kittens. So being as flexible as you can about where you place kittens, like, really works for us. The point that was raised back at the beginning, though, is that work with your community as well. Like, if someone is expert in taking bottle babies for you, not all of your community wants to get up and feed a baby every 2 to 3 hours. And if you've got people that want to do that for you, once those kittens are like beyond that stage, move them on to someone that is then better able or more willing to look after them, and use your bottle baby fosters for what they're best able to do. We've also taken an approach where we've tried to, we don't have limitless resources, but we try and provide as many resources as we can to our fosters as we can. So if someone's willing to take bottle babies from you, willing to foster them, like, provide the resources that they need, and focus your resources on those like most difficult placements. So that idea of flexibility, getting bottle babies to where they are, getting them to the right homes as quickly as you can, those are all keys to our approach.
All right. Well, thank you. Oh, Peter, did you? Yeah, Peter, please.
I was just going to echo Danielle's comment about not about bringing kittens in necessarily, but backing up from that even further to say, don't have the kittens in the first place. And so my one tip would be targeting. I mean, we've all got limited resources, and rather than sprinkling, say, 10 surgeries across the whole neighborhood or across a whole zip code, focus on those groups of cats. Really micro targeting. That means if you're really stretched, as most of us are right now, with surgical capacity, focusing on the females even. It can, and Danielle's point about mapping, all of that, use that intel to really, really target your efforts as much as possible.
About that. So, there is, first, I want to ask the panel, how have you seen cat intake within the industry, or maybe attitudes or approaches to the cat population change um, over the time of pre-COVID, COVID. Now we're in, COVID recovery. Talk to me about how the industry has changed in its approach. Have you seen regression? Has there been has support waned, or has it increased? I'd love to hear from you all about what you've just seen, what your viewpoint is.
I'll start that one if no one argues with me. I was at APA when COVID hit in March of 2020 and got to now I look back on that, and I say all the time, I think COVID is the best thing that ever happened to cats. In March of 2020, everyone in the country who historically, every shelter that said, well, we have to take the cats, that's what we've always done, we have to take them. All of a sudden you didn't have to take them because you were closed. Shelters across the country closed, and we're not taking cats. And the world did not end. Cats did not start proliferating all over the street. We weren't swimming in cats. Nothing terrible happened. And it let us kind of hit reset on cats and start for really the first time in our industry to thoughtfully think about the way that we shelter cats in a really big national way. And I think it has really paved the way for us to start talking about pathway planning, to embrace return to home and managed admissions. And I think it's really been a game changer for cats. And so it's been my experience over the last 3 years, watching more and more shelters embrace return to home. You're fighting the good fight to put the friendly, healthy, thriving cats back outside. If that's where they come from, we're seeing more and more shelters embrace that. We're seeing more families kept together. We're seeing a lot more community sheltering. And these are all really, really wonderful things. But I think to Vincent's point, it was kind of COVID that tripped that switch and allowed us to make that pause on it. And as a result, we're seeing intakes go down, or the intakes that we are doing be more meaningful, meaning these are the cats that actually belong in our shelter now, instead of all the healthy, friendly cats that we have rounded up and essentially stolen from our neighbors inside of our shelter walls. And when COVID first happened in March, I remember I was getting emails from across the country from shelters saying, Monica, how do we save that feline leukemia cat again? What do I do with this diabetic thing with 3 eyes and 2 legs? How do I save that now? We've never been able to do that before. We were so overwhelmed, but we've kind of got some free space and time now to treat the really hard cases that we've never been able to do. And I've seen that amplified all across the country when we slow down the conveyor belt of cats coming in and focus on the ones that really need us. We're able to provide much better services for those cats who really need our help. And so that's been a really positive thing that I've seen over the last 3 years.
For us, it's a little bit different. Obviously, we are all kittens all the time, our program, not our shelter. So I can really only speak to our kittens. But we were at a point where our program was exploding. To go from 92 kittens to 1,547, we were primarily bringing in transfers, and we were pulling from lots of communities outside the Washington, D.C. area. So as we were doing this, we were really starting to focus right as COVID started on what are we going to do with these communities? I mean, we can continue to pull endlessly, but we've got to figure out how to turn the faucet off. And so we had come up with a plan to make satellite campuses out of the ones that we pulled the most from. And they were all very diverse in what their demographics were and what their issues were that had them with such a large amount of neonates. One was they had ordinances against TNR was one. One was they were working with the sheriff, and fosters had to go through a very strict background check to even foster. So we worked with all of them, but what we did is we set up a program with them, and we really incentivized them to work with us to manage it. So they started to save the kittens in their community and keep them in their community. And what we gave them in return was our word that we would save their kittens, that we would prioritize taking their kittens above all else. And for that was a huge thing, because they didn't want to euthanize, and they had been, and because they had no choice. So if we said, if you'll train we will come in and we will do the trainings. We will help you set up whatever you need to set up based on what we did. And in return, your kittens have a safe place with us. You will be our first priority. And we had 5 of those. We have one now just outside DC that not only do we not pull from, but they have started transferring in. We have one that has a TNR ordinance in place where they now can bring rescues in to TNR in their community. And I just think it's a wonderful example of how everyone working together can make big changes, because before that, nobody did. You know, everyone was sort of in their own little bubble. And this little tiny program is, you know, an example of everybody coming together in an area. And so we're really still in the infancy of this, but all of these little tentacles are still coming together. And now we're going all over the country and doing it, and everybody has their own thing to offer, and it changes every day when we're doing these presentations and doing all of this education. It changes all the time. And so I'm really excited to see where it goes. But for us, it was just a matter of giving people support and then taking what they have to offer and just helping them. So we didn't really see a huge change. We just knew that as our program grew to go into the communities that needed the most, we had to offer them something that they couldn't refuse. And for that was, we promise that we will take your kittens before all others if you're working to save them in your community. I don't know if we hadn't done that, if there would have ever been an opportunity for them not to.
And just to build on what Monica and Marnie have both said, a lot of what I've seen is that shift in thinking about what we're doing as being so shelter centric and shifting that to the community. So looking at doing those outward programs, those TNR, SNR, return to home programs, building that foster network, all of those things that are really engaging the community to be able to do all of these life-saving efforts because we weren't having people come into the shelter. The other thing that I've seen that may be on a kind of a higher level is just like things like this, the kind of networking and conversation that's happened during the pandemic, where we've come together and we've had discussions and people are more comfortable having a Zoom meeting or a Zoom webinar now that they've been forced to. And it's really enabled us as a community, as a whole movement, to share our information more broadly. And I think, to me, that's one of the most exciting things of how we're able to connect and share. And they're hearing about all these people. We have 164 people live in this group, which is, pretty amazing. I don't remember a lot of webinars pre-pandemic that would have this many people live. So.
I guess I would offer a little bit of a mixed bag. We've seen a lot of our partners, whether they're shelters or rescues, be much more open to different conversations, and that's been a really positive trend that's continued down in Texas. So some of our partners before, who would have been, you have to take these cats or we're making a euthanasia decision, are now much more open to different discussions and are open to, like, they're more willing to deal with the easy and still are directing the more difficult towards us. Sadly, there are some shelters out there that, like, post-COVID have regressed and are less willing to do some of the things that they were doing. And I think, sadly, Austin may be one of those where we're not quite got the same flexibility and willingness to look at different questions since COVID. But it's kind of a little bit of a mixed bag, I would say. Some real positive trends, some places really willing to look at different questions and answer them in different ways. And sadly, I guess some not being as positive minded.
All right. And so that's really interesting, especially from somebody who, I worked in the industry for 20 years and then left it for a few years, but I wasn't part of it for most of COVID. Let me ask you this, we've heard, especially through some of our pilots and some of our partner shelters, that they get complaints about TNR just being a way for shelters to say they're not accepting animal cats or kittens and leaving those cats and kittens in the community to die. They need to be adopted into somebody's home. What would the panel say to how would you respond to a remark like that?
You're all going to make me go first again. I would respond to that by saying those cats have a home. They have one. It may not be the home that you would choose for that cat, but if they are thriving there, if they are fat and happy, then that is their home. And we can look back on the lineage of cats, and they have been thriving outdoors in every continent on this country except for Antarctica for literal ice ages. They're doing great as a species. And meeting the caregiver or the owner where they are and respecting that bond that they have is really important to building up your community and them viewing you as the resource versus doling out punitive measures or removing cats from their environment. So these cats have a home, and it's really important that we stop and take a look at that and be really sensitive to that. Is what is best for the cat? Is it to be separated from its cat and enter a shelter where the best shelter in the world makes it sick, where tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of cats are still euthanized in this country every year? Or do we meet the cat and the family where they are, benefit that cat how we can, spay and neuter, vaccinate it, provide that family with resources, and reserve the resources that we do have within the shelter walls for those cats who really need us. But Dr. Kate Hurley made a quote that I reference all the time, and she said, there are enough homes for all of them if you respect the homes that they are in. And so that is my default. We are going to look at the home that the cat is already in first and foremost, and that is the default, unless you can prove to me otherwise that that is not an acceptable home for the cat.
I love that. That should be on a t-shirt right there. That'll be our next fundraiser. I would add to this, and I say this as somebody my role is very much focused on research. So I do lots of reading and writing about these issues, but I'm also a caregiver myself. I've been feeding and fixing the neighborhood cats for a number of years in my community here in Phoenix. There was a study published just a couple of years ago, really interesting. It was out of University of British Columbia, and what they looked at, and to be clear, if my memory is correct, they looked at owner-surrendered dogs and cats. So keep that in mind. A little bit different. I encourage them, please look at the stray cats coming in and rerun the same study. What they found was really interesting and kind of unsettling, because it showed that animals coming into the shelter, and this was a large data set, these animals are coming from more vulnerable communities, more racially and ethnically diverse communities, and they're getting adopted predominantly in more affluent, less diverse communities. And again, this was a specific subset of their data, right? These were owner-surrendered animals. And I want to be clear, they are not saying, and I'm not saying, that this is inherently a problematic issue. We don't know, but it definitely jumped out in the data. I would imagine if you did this with community cats, this would be, to Monica's point, you would see this even more so. Where are the cats coming from? They're coming from these communities where they are, generally speaking, cared for. They may not have the resources, but they're cared for. And is it okay that maybe to some it would look like they won the lottery, right? They're living uptown in some high-rise condo now versus in this neighborhood they came from. But I think we need to be very careful about making those assumptions. Again, this particular study just brought that really to light, put numbers behind it. But if you talk to anybody who works in intake, they'll tell you that. They know that already, that's the trend, but it was anecdotal until these folks put numbers on it. So again, that's just putting some research, some science behind Monica's point. They have homes. Before we pluck them out of their homes, we should at least give some thought to, is this okay? And again, it raises all sorts of questions that, frankly, up until the pandemic, maybe we weren't wrestling with, because again, it felt like triage. The pandemic gave us a little bit of time to re-examine some of these things. So I will leave it. And to be clear, if anyone's interested in that study, peterw@bestfriends.org. Feel free to email me. I'll give you Vincent's cell number offline, and you can hit him up any time of day. He's good with that.
Just add to that, I've seen similar research that shows the same thing in DC with our DC Cat Count project, which looked at outdoor cat populations, but also assessed some shelter data, and saw a movement of cats coming in astray from a certain part of the city that is generally considered underserved and moving to a more wealthy part of the city. There's also been some research recently looking at the bonds that people have, the caregivers have with cats, and comparing that to the bonds that owners have with cats, and it's similar. We often discount the relationship that the people who care for outdoor cats, who they don't necessarily say they own, have. That somehow it's less, but we find that really not to be true. And also the relationship those cats have with other cats. This idea that cats are, loners, they're all, by themselves. They don't necessarily find relationships with other cats important. So we're taking that cat out of their home. It's kind of like we pick them up, everything they know, every person, every friend, the location, and you bring them somewhere completely different where they have no connection. They don't know anything. It's brand new, and think that that's somehow better because maybe they have a higher quality thread count sheets or something. And sometimes I think we just need to check ourselves and our perspectives, and that can be hard. But the more and more that you are engaging with people in the community and you talk to the people who care about these cats and care for them, I think that is what really helps us have trust in the community. I don't know if that was the answer to the question or not, but
It was quite beautiful, the answer, honestly. And you, as always, I learned something new from you, Danielle. So that was a great answer. If we don't have any of the other panelists that have an answer to that, I will, or at least don't want to answer it right now. I do have questions from the audience that I will start getting into now. The first one is April King. She writes, our program can only do return to home pathways. There is very, very limited adoption potential. Two problems we have with kittens. Most are found in or around the trash, either in plastic bags or boxes. And people don't want to raise kittens and put them back outside with no colony to rejoin. Have any studies looked at this?
I don't know of any studies that would look at that. I do know that the impact that our program has had on trappers, which was something that I hadn't anticipated, because it is devastating for trappers to go out into the community and be really making some progress and then not be able to have a place for kittens. So to have a program where you can bring kittens and to really be able to make an impact on these TNR communities has been huge. And for me, that was a really rewarding part, which I hadn't thought about, because TNR people are amazing to me. It's something that I've never been able to really get into. And I think it's so amazing. So it's something that, for us, really building up our bottle baby program was key. We do a lot of work trying to get specialized fosters in that region. We do a lot of training, getting people away from the idea that, kittens need to be fed every 2 hours, because that's, for a long time, that's what we were taught, that kittens need to be fed that way. We've worked closely with UC Davis and the University of Wisconsin, and our fosters feed at a rate, we do the training to educate people on how to care for kittens and in a different way in which we feed, so that it's a manageable way. And that's also helped us gain a lot of fosters. We also do lunch and learns with pharmaceutical sales reps for vets. So we'll go in with them with bottle babies. And then at the end, we get a lot of vet techs and vets that become fosters for those bottle babies, which are really, it's a great way to integrate with your vet community in your area. I've never heard of leaving them near a trash and then having them integrate back into a colony. I don't know necessarily what that question meant, but for us, if we were experiencing that, we're very urban, so we don't have that. But if I'd heard of that, I would get them to a program where they do have a lot of experienced bottle feeders, or I would create a program as much as I could in that area. If there are foster or if there are shelters or rescues on this call that need help with that, please do reach out to me. This is exactly what we do. We teach fosters. Our most popular program that we teach is called Taking the Fear Out of Bottle Feeding. We do a lot of engaging communities and rescues and shelters to get people to learn about it, tricks of the trade, things that make it a more rewarding and less fearful act, and getting people to do the stages that they're most comfortable with. Because I don't think that leaving them and leaving them in a certain area, I don't think that's a viable option for a neonate that doesn't have its mother.
Thank you, Marnie. And I will just add this real quick. TNR is about returning animals back into their communities, not back into a dangerous situation, which is what Kittens found in a dumpster. I would definitely qualify that as. So it's not simply the animal was found outside, the cat was found outside, so let's return them back outside. It's more about, knowing the circumstances and the condition they came from and returning them back, as long as you understand and know that they are returning back to the community they were born in and have been thriving in.
I'll just add that a lot of times when we talk about these things, and I know, all the folks on the panel here are all US based, and so we often think about things from our perspective. But when we think about it globally, cat biology is the same wherever we go, but the resources and the culture around cats may be different. And so that may be some factors that go into it. So I just wanted to add that because I know April is not in the US and the work that she does. So we'll be planning some cat vacations to all of these countries in need so that we can all go and be the tourist volunteers for them.
Really quick, I wanted to address one thing that April said too, and bring it back to pathway planning and talk about kittens for a second. Kittens are one of those populations that in a perfect world, we want them to take the off-ramp on the return to home superhighway, as Million Cat Challenge used to phrase it. And that means that in a perfect world, we would take those kittens off from the community and get them adopted into a traditional home if they are, of course, young enough to be socialized. And they're looking for a different life if they're free to be brought into the shelter or brought into a foster home. There are studies out there that talk about why we're prioritizing kittens. We know that the kitten mortality rate in field is much, much lower than adult cats. They need help. They're not yet a part of their environment. And they usually don't have a multitude of caretakers yet like the adult cats do. And so when we have the opportunity and when we can, kittens are a population that we would like to say, yes, we should take them in when we can, hopefully get them adopted without a shelter stay. But they go down a different pathway than return to home in the perfect world. I will put a caveat on that though and say not everyone has the resources to do that all the time and not every time with kittens. Be very cautious that you don't take that literally, and so now you're bringing in 4, 5, 6-month-old feral kittens and trying to socialize them. Be very conscious of your resources, but also keep in mind and in your heart that you're not always going to have the resources to do that. And if the best that you can do to help that cat is to spay the kitten and put it back into its safe environment with its cat family and a caregiver, then that is a perfectly acceptable thing to do, and you're still benefiting the cat.
If I can just add to that real quickly, I like very much the superhighway metaphor. So if you think about just traffic in general, you have way more options when you don't have a traffic jam up ahead because you're bringing in all the cats, the healthy cats from your community into your shelter. and now the kennels are all full, and you've used up all your resources. Your fosters are full, like everything is full. And that was one of the things that stuck with me the first time I visited Vincent in San Antonio, was like the kennels were empty. The concern there was the cats are going to be lonely because they don't have friends and neighbors in the shelter. But that was a radical change from what it had been. And again, you just think about how few options you have when your shelter is maxed out, right? And of course, that means when you're not bringing in all the healthy cats, you have options for the cats who didn't come in, you have options for kittens, and also dogs. Like, it spills over into the dog population when you're just not bursting at the seams. So that philosophical change has ripple effects throughout the entire system in the community.
So this next question, I actually, I will cue Neil up to start out the answer to this question from the audience. This is from Brenda Miller. Where on the spectrum of foster experience do you consider pregnant moms?
It's a great question. I mean, we would generally play them to our whole community. They are, there's a subjective opinion about to be expressed here, but they're relatively easy foster placements. They're an incredibly rewarding foster placement for people. We tend to have repeat fosters who that's like the experience they enjoy. Clearly the care element relative to orphans is significantly easier for people. We encourage people to say that, like, a pregnant mom and her kittens need such a small space in your home that it's again a relatively easy experience, that the care that you're providing to the kittens, all being equal, where the kittens are thriving and doing well with mum themselves, is relatively light. It's reporting weights to us. It's reporting that the kittens are growing and weight is growing in line with expectations. But I appreciate that's a subjective opinion, but for us, we view those as a relatively easy foster placement. Our training is such that, like, a first-time foster could absolutely take that pregnant cat home into their home and look after them. One thing we are doing, and one thing we ask our fosters, is when their cats have their litters, we quite frequently ask them to take orphan kittens into that litter as well. Again, assuming mum's healthy, babies are healthy, and the orphans are healthy. And that's something that our fosters take to and adopt to incredibly well. So we have a strong demand for pregnant mom cats in our foster community. And we view those placements as relatively straightforward, but incredibly valuable to us.
All right. So as far as TNR, nursing moms, this is a nursing moms question from Kimberly Kemp. Thank you, Kimberly. But is it keep to spay or let go and return for trapping later is what her question is. And what is your take? Anyone?
I'll jump in quickly. If you have a cat in a trap, I would not release her for that. I think that's the decision then you need to make, whether you're like a lot of people in the chat, their organization support doing like a spay abort. Others may, have a cultural community where putting them in foster is more appropriate for them. But if you're going to release that cat, the work that you've already put in is done. You have her. If you're letting her out, then you don't know if you're going to be able to get her. You're going to be able to get those kittens. Whatever's going to happen, it's going to be a larger project. So I would keep her and treat her.
And Angela Fahey asks, I help run a community cat program in Tucson, Arizona, where kitten season only slightly pauses January to March. We are very high volume. We TNR 2,380 cats last year and are on a track to exceed the total this year. My question is, how do you best support litters in the field and instruct your volunteers about leaving kittens where they have been found, where they found them? And then what do you recommend is the best time to spay a mom? Anybody? Anyone?
I'll just answer part of that question. I think if you are dealing with a program and you have litters, you have kittens that are out in the field, keeping a chart of those kittens, so that you are tracking when they are, because the idea that if you're leaving the kittens with mom, it's not just, and then you're done, right? You're going to want to go back and either, at the very least, spay and neuter them, right? So when is the appropriate time in their development for that? So, keeping a chart and saying, here, this is, at this approximately this date, we're going to need to go back and find these kittens. And you could do the same thing if you have cats coming into your TNR program that you don't have their kittens. You don't know that they're kittens, but maybe as you're spaying them, you realize that they're postpartum. Like, how long has that been? Keep a list of that so then you can go out proactively and find those kittens so that they're not then growing up and repopulating that list. So as far as the best time to spay them, I'm going to pass that off to one of my esteemed panelists.
I was going to say the best time to spay a mom is when she enters the trap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. The best time is when you got her in custody, right? Like that's for applies across the board pretty much. I would just quickly to add to Danielle's comment. A lot of the questions or the scenarios being described here, I think it depends a lot on the situation. Are you talking about a group of cats that's behind the Walmart? They might have a great caregiver, whatever, but they're kind of fending for themselves a lot of the time, versus this 2 or 3 cats in somebody's yard, and they can keep an eye on the kittens are growing up, everything's good, I can touch them, I'm socializing. Like, that's a very different scenario, and probably changes that, plus all your resources, changes your course of action. Are we talking about, again, the cats who live on your patio, basically? Or are you talking about ones that are out in the community, less protected? That you would want to, I would be more concerned about those kittens, certainly, than ones I could had eyes on several times a day.
All right. Another question from Kimber Hopkins. Any suggestions for foster-based rescues to engage more fosters who actually followed through?
Follow through with follow through with actually fostering?
I believe that's the question.
Okay, we have had great luck with our foster program. Obviously, a big part of that is enabling our fosters and creating a community within them. So what we did is we started a private fostering page just for our kitten fosters for our program. And so, like I said, our kittens go in their time with us. They can go from like 2 to 3 fosters just in their time with us. So they've sort of created their own conveyor belt. So we put a lot of trust in them. So that's something that when we started this program, the woman that I do this with, she and I had fostered throughout the entire community, which is actually how I met Danielle years and years and years ago. And we really sat down and talked about what we liked and what we didn't like about fostering. And a lot of it was you didn't have a lot of control. And so we really put a lot of faith in, especially the really good ones. And we say, okay, if I have a bottle feeder, if we have a senior foster, and then they really like a sophomore foster, then they just sort of, they're like, okay, when foster senior's done, their fosters go to that other one. So they have like a camaraderie, and we have so much trust in them, and they have so much respect for us that it really becomes a cohesive relationship. And that takes time. You really have to invest in your fosters, and you can monitor most of it on this platform of Facebook, or if you want to use Slack, or however you want to use it. But there are definitely ways that you can take a lot off of that foster coordinator's page. But for us, it was really investing in the fosters. So, we're called the Kitten College, whatever you want to call ourselves. But we have, our main fosters, our core fosters are called our professors. So, like that's just something we can give them that designates them the respect that they deserve in our program, and they're the ones that people can go to that are new to the community. And they can be like, oh, well, I want to talk to this professor, and, they get jackets, and people can strive to be that. And if people want to upgrade to classes, then, that we have a path for them to do that. So really it's about empowering fosters and giving them a piece of the program.
And I will leave our final comment to Neil.
Just on that, and I'll try and be quick, I realize we're tight on time, but like there's also an obligation on us, on our part, to get to fosters quickly. Like a foster is never more enthusiastic about joining your process than the first time they reach out to you. So don't make them wait. Get in touch with them quickly. Get the right animal into their home as quickly as you can. Don't make them wait on pleas coming out. Don't make them pick off a list. Speak to your fosters as quickly as you can. Make sure they understand that they are in your program, that they're part of the process, and get an animal into their home quickly.
Well, thank you all for being here. I so appreciate it. We had a few more questions, but we will get those answered for you all. This has been a great panel today. So thank you everyone for tonight. It's an incredible panel. Tonight's webinar, just so everybody knows, the recording will be distributed within those 3 business days, as we said before. Our next event is Tuesday, May 9th, on compassionate communication, featuring Shannon Glenn of My Pit Bull Is My Family. So please register for that. If you haven't already gotten an email about that, please contact us and we'll get you, or go to the Haas project website and to get signed up. My team will share the registration link in the chat, and keep an eye out for the emails. Thank you for tonight. I hope to see all of you soon, and go out there and save some cats, people. Oh, and kittens. Have a good one.